Look, I'm not saying the Galactic Defense Academy was trying to kill us. I'm just saying that if you squinted real hard at their curriculum, it looked suspiciously like a multi-species insurance fraud scheme. The briefing room smelled like fear and whatever the flitterwing equivalent of nervous sweating was. Spoiler alert, it's some kind of pheromone that makes your eyes water and your sinuses question their life choices. 37 cadets from 19 different species, all crammed into a room designed for maybe 20, watching our commanding instructor tap through holographic displays with the enthusiasm of someone announcing funeral arrangements. Commander Vrilton stood at the front, his Krellian exoskeleton gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Picture a 7-foot mantis shrimp that went to law school and developed a personality disorder around military regulations. That's Vrilton. He cleared his throat, which sounded like grinding metal, and addressed us with all the warmth of a tax audit. Cadets, you have been selected for Advanced Survival Simulation 47. Codename, Burnout Protocol. Next to me, Pip, the flitterwing, made a sound like a squeaky toy being murdered. Pip stood about 3 feet tall, covered in iridescent feathers with wings that vibrated at the frequency of pure anxiety. Right now, those wings were humming like a leaf blower. "Oh stars, oh stars, oh stars," Pip whispered, which was his response to everything from pop quizzes to lunch options. On my other side, Gornax the Thraken puffed out his chest. Imagine if a bear and a rhinoceros had a baby, then sent it to the gym every day for a decade. That's Gornax, all muscle, thick gray hide, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having experienced actual consequences. "Finally," Gornax rumbled, "a challenge worthy of Thraken valor." I was the only human in the room. Marcus Webb, Earth's finest export, according to exactly nobody. I'd joined the academy because, honestly, the recruitment poster looked cool, and Earth's job market was about as welcoming as a cactus farm. Plus, the galaxy had never seen humans before. We were the new kids, and I was apparently the guinea pig to see if we'd explode under pressure or something equally dramatic. Vrilton continued, "You will be deployed into a simulated environment experiencing a Category 5 plasma firestorm. Surface temperatures will reach 4,000 degrees standard. Atmospheric conditions will be, and I quote from the manual, utterly catastrophic." Several cadets started hyperventilating. One blorptoid cadet actually fainted, which looked like a balloon deflating in fast forward. "Survival rate for this simulation historically sits at 12%. Vrilton added helpfully. "You have 6 hours. Any questions?" Every appendage in the room shot up. Vrilton ignored all of them. "Excellent. You deploy in 10 minutes. Draw your standard survival packs and proceed to Pod Bay 7. May the cosmic winds carry your spirits gently into whatever afterlife your species prefers." Well, that was encouraging. The prep bay was chaos incarnated and given anxiety medication that wasn't working. Species were checking their gear with the frantic energy of people who just realized their parachute was actually a backpack full of bricks. I grabbed my survival pack, standard issue, which according to the label contained 1 thermal blanket, 2 nutrition bars that tasted like cardboard's evil cousin, a basic medical kit, and a water recycler. No weapons, no communication devices, no instruction manual titled "How Not to Die Screaming." "Human Marcus," Vrilton approached me, his mandibles clicking, which I'd learned was the Krellian equivalent of concerned frowning. "Your species has no experience with plasma-based weather phenomena. Perhaps you should observe from the monitoring station." "And miss all the fun?" I checked my pack straps. "Commander, I didn't come to the galaxy's premier military academy to watch from the sidelines." "Your funeral rites will be respectfully observed," Vrilton said, which I think was his attempt at encouragement. The deployment pods looked like coffins designed by someone who really hated comfort. We strapped in, 37 cadets packed into individual insertion vehicles, ready to be shot down to a simulated hellscape like the galaxy's worst theme park ride. Pip was in the pod next to mine, visible through the small window, his feathers practically vibrating off his body. "Marcus," his voice crackled through the comm system. "I've updated my will 3 times today. Do you think that's excessive?" "Pip, buddy, we're going to be fine. The survival rate is 12%. That's 12% higher than 0. I'm an optimist." Gornax's voice boomed over the channel. Let the flames test our mettle. Today we prove our worth. The countdown started. 10 seconds. My pod sealed with a hiss that sounded disturbingly final. 5 seconds. I could hear Pip praying to approximately 6 different deities. 1 second. Here we go. The pod launched, and my stomach tried to exit through my spine. Through the viewport, I watched as we descended toward the simulation planet's surface, where angry red and orange clouds swirled like a particularly aggressive lava lamp. Lightning, except it was plasma, arced between cloud formations. The temperature readout on my pod display was climbing faster than my credit card debt. We hit the atmosphere and everything became fire. Welcome to Hell Week indeed. The pod landing was less graceful touchdown and more angry God throwing a tin can at the ground. My teeth rattled, my bones rattled, things I didn't know I had rattled. The door blew off with a hydraulic hiss and I stumbled out onto terrain that looked like it had been personally offended by the concept of hospitality. Jagged rocks, ash-gray sand, scattered vegetation that appeared to be already apologizing for existing, and overhead, oh boy, overhead was where things got spicy. The sky was the color of a bruise that had developed malicious intent. Plasma arcs danced between massive storm clouds, each bolt carrying enough energy to power a small city, or vaporize anything stupid enough to be standing outside. The temperature gauge on my wrist display read 300 and climbing. Fast. Around me, other pods had landed in a rough circle. Cadets emerged looking like they had just been told their student loans were actually tripling instead of being forgiven. Species-specific panic was breaking out everywhere. And let me tell you, witnessing 17 different evolutionary responses to mortal terror was quite the educational experience. Vrilton's pod landed with military precision about 20 meters from mine. He emerged, took one look at the sky, and his antennae went rigid. In Krellian body language, this was the equivalent of a human's eyes going dinner plate wide. All cadets establish perimeter formation, he shouted, his voice cracking halfway through. Follow Survival Protocol Gamma 17, subsection 4, paragraph 8, which clearly states that in plasma storm scenarios we should. A plasma bolt struck about 50 yards away. The impact crater it left was impressive and deeply concerning. Vrilton's voice went up 3 octaves. Run! Protocol abandoned. Save yourselves. So much for military discipline. Pip shot past me like a feathered bullet, already crying. I knew it. I knew this was how it ended. I should have become an accountant like my mother wanted. Gornax was turning in circles, his thick gray hide already showing scorch marks from the ambient heat. For someone who'd been bragging about Thraken invincibility 5 minutes ago, he looked remarkably like he was reconsidering his life choices. This heat, it is uncomfortable, he bellowed, which was the Thraken equivalent of screaming in terror. My honor remains intact, but my skin has concerns. A group of Zenthari cadets, who looked like upright salamanders in fancy armor, made a break for a rocky outcropping. One of them was reciting what sounded like religious texts. Another was just screaming. A third had apparently decided that lying down and playing dead was a viable strategy, which, spoiler alert, it wasn't. I stood there, pack slung over my shoulder, and took a deep breath. The air tasted like a campfire mixed with ozone and poor life decisions. Around me, chaos. Above me, apocalypse. In my head, surprisingly calm thoughts. This was just weather. Angry weather, sure. Homicidal weather, absolutely. But still just weather. I started walking, scanning the terrain with the practiced eye of someone who had actually paid attention during survival training instead of just nodding along while daydreaming about lunch. The landscape was all wrong for just running around screaming. There, about 40 yards northeast, a natural formation. 3 large boulders forming a rough windbreak with a depression behind them. The wind was picking up, hot enough to make breathing feel like inhaling from a hairdryer set to Judgment Day. Debris was starting to fly, small rocks and ash whipping around like the planet was trying to exfoliate us to death. I altered course toward the rock formation. On the way, I started grabbing things. A piece of metal debris from a broken pod, some dried vegetation that looked flammable, a flat stone that would work as a surface. Vrilton saw me and scuttled over, his exoskeleton clicking rapidly. Cadet Marcus, what are you doing? We must find shelter immediately. That's exactly what I'm doing, Commander. You are collecting garbage. I'm collecting resources. There's a difference. Another plasma bolt hit closer this time. The shockwave knocked 3 cadets off their feet. Gornax was now running in a genuine panic, all pretense of valor abandoned, screaming something about how Thraken warriors were not designed for this nonsense. I reached the rock formation and dropped my collection behind the windbreak. The temperature here was marginally better, maybe 290 instead of 300 plus. I'd take it. Pip crash-landed next to me, literally just flew straight into the sand and laid there whimpering. Is this the shelter? Are we safe? Please tell me we're safe. Safe is a strong word. Less likely to immediately die is more accurate. I'll take it. Other cadets were starting to find their way to various shelters. A cave entrance about 100 yards away was attracting the majority, including Vrilton, who was now herding people toward it with the desperate energy of someone whose entire worldview was crumbling. I, however, had other plans. I started arranging the debris I'd collected in a very specific pattern. The metal piece as a base, the flat stone on top, the dried vegetation arranged around it. Gornax stumbled over, his hide showing more scorch marks. Human, what are you building? A monument to our impending deaths? Something like that. The wind was howling now, carrying embers and ash. The plasma storm was intensifying, the sky a roiling mass of energy and cosmic rage. My wrist display showed the temperature still climbing. 400 degrees. 450. I pulled out one of the nutrition bars from my pack and unwrapped it carefully. Gornax stared. You cannot possibly be thinking of eating at a time like this. Oh, I'm not just thinking about it. I placed the nutrition bar on the flat stone and smiled. I'm about to teach you all why humans have such a weird relationship with fire. The cave entrance was packed with cadets huddling together like a support group for bad decisions. Through my wrist display's communication function, I could hear the panicked chatter on the group channel. Vrilton was attempting to maintain some semblance of order, which was going about as well as teaching fish to tap dance. Everyone remain calm, his voice crackled, distinctly not calm. The simulation's automated difficulty scaling means the storm will peak in approximately 90 minutes and then... 90 minutes? Someone shrieked. I didn't finish and then maintain peak intensity for the remaining 4.5 hours. That didn't help. The channel devolved into what could only be described as multi-species screaming. I muted it and focused on my project. The wind was perfect now, hot and steady, carrying embers from the plasma strike scattered across the landscape. I'd arranged my debris pile in a U-shape, with the opening facing away from the primary wind direction. The metal base was already heating up from ambient temperature. The flat stone on top would distribute heat evenly. I pulled out my second nutrition bar and my water recycler. From the medical kit, I extracted the small thermal pack, designed to provide emergency warmth. I cracked it, felt it start to generate heat, and placed it strategically within my debris structure. Slowly, carefully, I began nurturing a controlled fire. Back at the cave, someone apparently still had eyes on me. The group channel unmuted with Vrilton's horrified voice. Cadet Marcus, what in the name of the cosmic void are you doing? I tapped my communicator. Cooking, Commander. Silence. Beautiful, confused silence. Then, you're what? Cooking. You know, applying controlled heat to food to make it more palatable and safe for consumption. It's a human thing. The simulation is trying to kill you with fire, and you're making more fire? Technically, I'm redirecting existing thermal energy for practical purposes. Another plasma bolt hit nearby. My little fire shelter held firm, the windbreak doing exactly what I designed it to do. The flames from my controlled burn were actually creating a heat bubble that was deflecting the worst of the thermal radiation. Basic physics, really. Hot air rises, creates a pressure differential, and boom, you've got your own personal microclimate. I placed the first nutrition bar, now unwrapped, on the hot stone. It started sizzling immediately. The smell hit me. Processed proteins and synthetic grains reacting to heat. Not exactly gourmet, but compared to eating them cold, this was 5-star dining. Pip's voice squeaked over the comm. Did he just... Are we smelling food? Affirmative, I replied, flipping the ration bar with a piece of debris I was using as a makeshift spatula. This particular ration has a protein base that caramelizes nicely at high temperatures. Really brings out the, less cardboard-like qualities. From the cave, I could see figures moving to the entrance, staring out at me. The human, sitting calmly in the middle of a plasma firestorm, grilling. Gornax's voice came through, confused and slightly offended. Your species evolved to be comfortable around open flames? Comfortable? We throw parties around them. Humans have been cooking with fire for roughly 400,000 years. We call it camping when we do it for fun. We literally take our families into the wilderness, start fires on purpose, and cook meat over them while telling scary stories. That is... Gornax struggled for words. The most insane thing I have ever heard. Wait until I tell you about fireworks. Those are explosives we set off during celebrations. The instructors monitoring the simulation were having a moment. I could imagine them in the control room, probably staring at their displays like the readouts had personally betrayed them. Back at my setup, the first ration bar was done. I took a bite. Hot, slightly crispy on the outside, warm and almost pleasant on the inside. Damn near gourmet by military ration standards. I started on the second one. Vrilton's voice came through the comm, strained and bewildered. Cadet Marcus, I am ordering you to abandon your barbecue and take shelter immediately. With respect, Commander, I am in shelter. This windbreak is providing superior thermal protection compared to that cave. The plasma strikes are following predictable ionic pathways, none of which intersect my current position. The controlled fire is creating a convection barrier that's actually reducing ambient temperature in my immediate vicinity. By my calculations, I'm currently safer and more comfortable than anyone huddled in that cave. Silence again. I could almost hear Vrilton's brain trying to process this information and failing. How? He finally managed. Are you not dead? Humans are weirdly hard to kill, Commander. It's kind of our thing. The storm was raging harder now, the sky a solid mass of angry energy. Plasma bolts were hitting every 30 seconds or so, turning sand to glass, rocks to slag. The temperature had peaked at 500 degrees standard, which was officially in the "this kills most species" range. I was grilling ration bars and genuinely enjoying the warmth. Pip's voice came through, tiny and hopeful. Marcus, is there room at your fire for one more? I looked at my setup. The windbreak could handle a few more bodies. The thermal dynamics would actually improve with more mass to stabilize the heat bubble. Sure, buddy, come on over, bring Gornax and anyone else who's tired of hiding. Just stay low and move during the gaps between plasma strikes. You're inviting us to dinner? During a Category 5 plasma storm? Well, yeah, what else are we going to do? Hide in a cave and panic? That's boring. This way we panic in comfort with hot food. I could practically hear them debating. Human insanity versus empty stomachs and genuine terror. The eternal struggle. Finally, Gornax's voice rumbled. A Thraken warrior does not hide in caves. I will join this barbecue of madness. Pip squeaked. If the big guy's going, I guess I should too. For solidarity. And definitely not because that food smells amazing. Through the swirling ash and heat distortion, I saw figures emerging from the cave, moving carefully toward my position. Time to turn this survival scenario into a cookout. The galaxy was about to learn that humans don't just survive apocalyptic scenarios. We cater them. Gornax arrived first, moving in short bursts between plasma strikes like the galaxy's most nervous linebacker. He dove behind the windbreak, his massive frame sending up a spray of ash, and immediately scrambled close to the fire. This is insane, he panted, but he was already extending his hands, paws, toward the flames. Why is this working? This should not be working. Science, I said, flipping another ration bar. And a little bit of humans being too stubborn to accept that weather gets a vote. Pip arrived next, literally blown in by a gust of superheated wind, tumbling like a feathered tumbleweed. He came to rest against the rock, breathing hard, his feathers singed at the edges but otherwise intact. I'm alive, he gasped. I'm alive. and it smells like food. And I'm so confused. Welcome to the barbecue, Pip. Grab a spot. 3 more cadets scurried over during the next lull. 2 Zenthari and a Broljan who looked like a 3-eyed sloth with existential dread. They huddled into the windbreak's protection, and I watched their postures shift from terrified to merely deeply concerned as they felt the temperature difference. The Broljan's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. This is considerably less horrible than the cave. That's the spirit, I said. Lower your expectations enough and anything becomes tolerable. I had 6 ration bars cooking now, laid out on the hot stone like the world's saddest hibachi grill. The meat-adjacent ones were sizzling nicely. The grain-based ones were developing a crispy exterior. The fruit-flavored one was, well, it was trying its best. Vrilton's voice crackled over the comm. All cadets who have abandoned shelter to join the humans' thermal suicide report status. Comfortable and eating hot food, sir, Gornax reported, his mouth already full. That is not a proper status report. Would you prefer alive and surprisingly not dead? Another plasma strike hit close enough that we all felt the shockwave. My fire flickered but held, the windbreak absorbing the blast wave. One of the Zenthari whimpered but stayed put. I started explaining while I cooked. See, the thing is, you're all thinking about this fire as another threat. But humans learned a long time ago that fire is a tool. Yeah, it's dangerous. Yeah, it can kill you. But if you understand it, respect it, and control it, fire becomes the difference between surviving and thriving. Pip nibbled on a ration bar I'd passed him. His eyes went wide. This is actually good. Why does cooking make it taste better? Chemistry. Heat breaks down complex proteins and carbohydrates, releasing flavors and making nutrients more accessible. Also, the Maillard reaction. I don't understand any of those words, but my taste buds are grateful. More cadets were trickling over now. Word had apparently spread that the crazy human had created an oasis of relative comfort in the middle of hell. Frilton himself appeared, moving with as much dignity as someone scuttling away from death could manage. He settled behind the windbreak, mandibles clicking rapidly, which I'd learned meant he was processing something that contradicted his entire worldview. Explain, he demanded. Explain how you are grilling food during a survival scenario designed to break military veterans. I gestured to the setup. The windbreak creates a dead zone for the worst thermal radiation. The controlled fire generates rising hot air, which creates a pressure barrier against the superheated atmosphere. We're essentially sitting in a bubble of slightly less murderous heat. The plasma strikes are following predictable paths based on ionic concentration. See that rock formation over there? It's got a higher metal content, so it's acting as a lightning rod. We're in a natural safe zone. You determined all of this in approximately 4 minutes while everyone else was panicking? I mean, yeah. My planet has pretty aggressive weather, too. Hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, floods. You learn to read the signs or you become a statistic. One of the Zenthari raised a claw tentatively. Your planet tries to kill you regularly and you just live there anyway? We don't really have a choice. It's our planet, so we adapted. Humans are really good at adapting. We're not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the fastest. But we're persistent and creative, and we refuse to let things like hostile environments tell us what to do. Gornax was on his 3rd ration bar, his earlier terror replaced by something approaching wonder. The Thraken pride themselves on martial valor, on facing enemies with strength and honor. But you humans, you barbecue during apocalypses. That is a different kind of courage. It's not courage, I said, starting another batch of food. It's spite. The weather doesn't get to ruin my meal. The storm was at full intensity now. The sky was solid plasma discharge, turning day into an angry orange twilight. The temperature readout said 530 degrees. In the cave, cadets were probably melting. Here, around the fire, we were uncomfortable but functional. And we were eating together. I pulled out the water recycler and passed it around. Everyone took careful sips, rationing, but the shared resource created a sense of camaraderie. We were a team now, huddled around a fire that should have been killing us but instead was keeping us alive. Pip spoke up, his voice quiet. On my world, fire is considered an enemy. Our ancestors feared it above all else. To deliberately create it, to sit beside it, this is beyond our understanding. Yeah, but you're doing it anyway, I pointed out. That's pretty brave. I am terrified. Brave doesn't mean not scared. It means doing the thing even though you're scared. Vrilton was quiet, watching the flames with an expression that was hard to read on a mantis shrimp face. Finally, he spoke. The simulation parameters were designed to force cadets into pure survival mode. Individual response, every species for themselves. But you have created community in the middle of catastrophe. Humans do our best cooking during disasters, I said. It's traditional. House burns down. The neighbors show up with casseroles. Flood destroys the town. Someone sets up a grill and starts feeding people. It's how we cope. We gather, we eat. We remind ourselves that we're not alone. Another cadet arrived, then two more. The windbreak was getting crowded, but the thermal dynamics were actually improving with more bodies. We were creating our own ecosystem, a little bubble of civilization in the chaos. I looked around at the assembled group. Different species, different worlds, different everything. But right now, sharing food around a fire while hell raged outside, we weren't so different after all. You know what? Gornak said suddenly. I'm starting to understand why humans are considered dangerous. Not because of violence or weapons, but because you refuse to accept that something is impossible. You just make it work anyway. I grinned and flipped another ration bar. Welcome to humanity. We specialize in turning apocalypses into party venues. In the simulation control room, which I learned about later, the instructors were having what could diplomatically be called a comprehensive nervous breakdown. The lead instructor, a four-armed Kixnari named Torvin, was staring at the holographic display like it had just insulted his entire family tree. That's 17 cadets now, he said slowly, gathered around a cook fire, in a Category 5 plasma storm. And their vital signs are stable. Some are even improving. His assistant, whose name was Krell and who looked like a disappointed tree, shook his branches in confusion. The thermal readings don't make sense. That fire should be adding to the ambient heat, making the situation worse. Instead, it's creating a localized cooling effect. Do we shut it down? And admit that a first-year cadet found a loophole in our most brutal simulation? Point taken, we let it play out. Back in the actual hellscape, we'd moved beyond just surviving. Now we were problem-solving as a group, which was either going to save us or create the most spectacular failure in Academy history. I'd started sketching in the ash. Okay, so the storm has a pattern. Plasma strikes every 20 to 30 seconds, rotating through these ionic channels in the atmosphere. If we can map them, we can predict safe movement corridors. Vrilton finished, his tactical training kicking in. His earlier panic had been replaced by something approaching excited focus. Pip, your species has enhanced visual acuity in the electromagnetic spectrum. Can you see the ionic buildups before discharge? Pip, who'd spent the entire simulation so far assuming he'd die, suddenly sat up straighter. Yes, actually. There's a luminescence that appears about 3 seconds before each strike. That's our early warning system, I said. Gornax cracked his knuckles, a sound like boulders grinding together. And I can carry equipment or injured cadets. My strength is optimal for rapid extraction. The Xanthari cadets, who'd been quiet, spoke up. Our species can sense vibrations through the ground. We can detect the plasma strike's impact points and map the safest zones. What started as survival was turning into tactical coordination. Each species brought something unique to the table, literally, since we were all still gathered around my makeshift grill. I looked at Vrilton. Commander, you've got the training to coordinate all this. If we pool our abilities instead of just hiding, we could actually ace this simulation. His antennae twitched. You want to turn a survival scenario into a tactical exercise? Why not? We're already here, might as well aim for extra credit. For a long moment, Vrilton stared at me. Then his mandibles clicked in what I'd learned was the Krellian version of a grin. That is the most audacious thing I have ever heard. I love it. All cadets, listen up. Over the next hour, we built something amazing. Using the fire as our base camp, we constructed an actual shelter. Gornax hauled large rocks to expand the windbreak. The Zenthari used their claws to dig channels that redirected runoff from the plasma strikes. Pip scouted from low altitude, calling out safe zones and incoming strikes. I taught them basic fire management, how to feed it, how to bank it, how to use it for warmth without creating a hazard. Turns out when you explain fire as a living thing that needs food, air, and control, even species that instinctively feared it could learn to work with it. The Broljan, whose name was Talk, had a brilliant idea. The simulation provides weather, yes? Weather means precipitation. If we can collect moisture from the air, we extend our water supply, I finished. Talk, you're a genius. We built condensation collectors using debris and scraps from the pods. The extreme temperature differential between the ground and upper atmosphere meant moisture was constantly cycling. We just needed to catch it. More cadets abandoned the cave, drawn by the smoke signal and the communal radio chatter about the humans' insane but functional survival compound. By hour 3 of the simulation, we had 28 cadets working together, each contributing their species' unique advantages. The storm was still raging, don't get me wrong. Plasma bolts were still hitting, the temperature was still in the this-should-kill-you range, and the wind was howling like a divorced banshee. But we'd adapted. Vrilton coordinated teams. Gornax led the construction crew. Pip ran reconnaissance. The Zenthari monitored seismic activity. I managed the fire and cooked meals for everyone in rotation. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were thriving. This is unprecedented, Vrilton said, eating his 5th ration bar of the day. In 15 years of running this simulation, no group has ever organized like this. That's because everyone's too busy panicking to think, I said. Fear makes you stupid. Food and community make you smart. The final hour of the simulation brought the worst of the storm. The plasma strikes intensified, hitting every 15 seconds. The temperature spiked to 600 degrees. The wind hit speeds that would normally peel skin from bones. We'd built a shelter that could handle it. Our expanded windbreak, our fire management, our team coordination, everything clicked together. When a plasma strike threatened one section, Pip warned us and Gornax moved people to safety. When the heat spiked, we used the condensation collectors to create cooling mist. When morale dipped, I cracked jokes and served hot food. The simulation timer hit 0. The storm vanished instantly, replaced by clear blue sky and comfortable temperatures. Our shelter stood intact. 28 cadets, representing 14 species, emerged dirty, exhausted, and completely unharmed. We'd beaten the unbeatable simulation, and we'd done it by having a barbecue. The debrief room was silent enough to hear a pin drop in a vacuum. 37 cadets stood at attention, though 28 of us were grinning like idiots and 9 looked like they regretted every life choice that led them to hiding in a cave while history was being made outside. Instructor Torvin stood at the front, his forearms crossed in what could only be described as confused frustration. Next to him, Krell, the tree-looking assistant, was rustling his branches in what I'd learned was their version of nervous laughter. "Cadets," Torvin began, his voice carefully controlled. "In 23 years of running advanced survival simulations, I have never, and I cannot stress this enough, never, seen anything remotely resembling what occurred today." Vrilton stood straighter, ever the professional. "Sir, if I may." "You may not, Commander Vrilton, because I'm still processing the fact that you abandoned established protocols to join a cookout in the middle of a plasma storm." "In my defense, sir, the humans' thermal dynamics were sound." Torvin turned his gaze to me, all 4 eyes focused like targeting lasers. "Cadet Marcus Webb, human, 1st year. Please explain to me in your own words why your first instinct during a Category 5 plasma firestorm was to set up a barbecue." I considered my answer carefully. Then I decided careful was overrated. "Sir, on Earth, humans have been cooking with fire for approximately 400,000 years. We've survived ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, and at least 6 major extinction-level events. We learned pretty early that fire is a tool, not just a threat. When I saw the simulation parameters, I recognized the thermal patterns from wildfire behavior back home. The solution seemed obvious. Create a controlled burn to manage the uncontrolled one, then use basic physics to make the environment survivable. The solution seemed obvious, Torvin repeated slowly. Yes, sir. To set up a grill. It was more of a flat stone cooking surface, sir, but yes. Krell made a sound like wind through branches, definitely laughing now. Torvin shot him a look that could melt steel, then turned back to us. The simulation's AI recorded everything. Your fire created a convection barrier that reduced ambient temperature by approximately 140 degrees in your immediate vicinity. Your windbreak design optimized thermal deflection. Your team coordination exceeded what we see from third-year officer candidates. He paused. You turned our most brutal survival scenario into a team-building exercise with catering. Gornax couldn't help himself. The catering was excellent, sir. Gornax, do not test me. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Torvin pulled up a holographic display showing our simulation performance metrics. The numbers were, frankly, ridiculous. 0 casualties, 0 injuries, resource efficiency at 215% of baseline, team cohesion scores that literally broke the chart because the scale didn't go that high. You didn't just survive, Torvin said quietly. You conquered. Every metric we used to evaluate performance, you shattered. The 9 cadets who remained in the cave. They survived, yes, but barely. Stress levels through the roof, resource depletion critical, morale in the basement. Meanwhile, your group was roasting rations and singing songs. To be fair, Pip squeaked, they were mostly human songs that none of us understood, but they were catchy. Torvin's expression did something complicated. The Academy's purpose is to prepare cadets for the worst scenarios the galaxy can throw at them. We design simulations to break you down, to see who has what it takes to lead when everything goes wrong. In 23 years, the average survival rate for Simulation 47 is 12%. Today, thanks to Cadet Webb's unorthodox approach and your team's willingness to follow his lead, the survival rate was 100%. He paused, letting that sink in. Which means, he continued, either our simulation is flawed, or we've been teaching survival wrong this entire time. The room was dead silent. I'm leaning toward the latter, Torvin admitted. Cadet Webb, your species has been part of the galactic community for less than a standard year. Your people have no advanced technology compared to the rest of us. Your biology is frankly mediocre by most metrics. You're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most intelligent by standardized measures. But today, you demonstrated something we've been trying to teach for decades and failing. You turned a group of terrified individuals into a functional team by doing something absurdly simple. Making dinner, sir? I offered. No. Well, yes, but no. You created community. You made them feel safe enough to think instead of just react. You leveraged every species' unique advantages instead of expecting everyone to follow one doctrine. You turned a survival scenario into a problem-solving exercise. He shook his head. It's brilliant and it's infuriating because it makes so much sense in hindsight. Krell spoke up, his voice like rustling leaves. The simulation AI has already flagged your approach for integration into the curriculum. Command wants to study the recordings. Several instructors are demanding to know why we didn't think of this ourselves. Brilton cleared his throat. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. The human is right that we've been approaching survival training wrong. We teach cadets to endure, to outlast, to survive in isolation. But real survival, especially in military operations, requires cooperation. Cadet Webb didn't just save himself. He saved everyone by making us work together. That's not just survival. That's leadership. I felt my face getting warm, which was impressive considering I'd spent 6 hours in a plasma storm and was only now blushing. Torvin nodded slowly. Agreed. Which brings me to my next point. He looked directly at me. Cadet Webb, your actions today have earned you a commendation for innovative tactical thinking. Additionally, Simulation 47 is being redesigned and will henceforth be known as the Webb Protocol. Congratulations. You've achieved legendary status in your first year. My brain short-circuited. Sir, I just made dinner. You made dinner during an apocalypse and convinced 24 terrified cadets from different species to join you. That's either genius or insanity. And at this level of performance, there's no functional difference. He straightened. Dismissed. Get cleaned up. Command wants full reports from all team leaders by 0800 tomorrow. We filed out, still processing. In the corridor, Gornax clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to rattle my teeth. Human Marcus, you have earned the respect of the Thraken people. We do not give this lightly. Also, I will require your recipe for the seasoned ration bars. Gornax, buddy, I literally just heated them up on a rock. Yes, but with confidence and excellent timing. This matters. Pip was hovering at shoulder height, his feathers finally settling into normal patterns. Marcus, I need to apologize. When you first joined our squad, I thought humans were going to be the weak link. Soft bodies, no natural weapons, average intelligence scores. I was very wrong. Pip, you flew reconnaissance during a plasma storm. You were incredible. I was terrified. Yeah, but you did it anyway. That's the definition of courage. Vrilton approached, his mandibles clicking in what I now recognized as approval. Cadet Webb, I formally request that you lead our squad's next survival exercise. I believe we could all learn from your approach. Commander, I just applied basic physics and common sense. Exactly. Common sense is apparently uncommon in military training. You've proven that survival isn't about following protocols blindly. It's about adapting, thinking, and bringing people together. He extended a claw. It has been an honor to serve alongside you today. I shook his claw, feeling the weight of the moment. These weren't just classmates anymore. They were friends, a team, a family forged in simulated fire and actual barbecue. As we walked toward the barracks, Pip flew ahead, then turned back with a question. So Marcus, be honest. Do humans really set off explosives during celebrations? Oh, absolutely. We call them fireworks. We pack gunpowder into shells, launch them into the sky, and detonate them in colorful patterns while children watch and clap. Every species within earshot stopped walking. You give explosives to children? Vrilton asked slowly. Well, sparklers, which are just handheld fire on a stick. The big explosives are handled by professionals, usually. Gornax laughed, a deep rumbling sound. Your species is absolutely insane, and I mean that with utmost respect. Thanks, we try. We reached the barracks, tired, dirty, and riding the high of surviving something that was supposed to break us. As everyone dispersed to their quarters, I looked back toward the simulation building. Somewhere in there, instructors were probably still trying to figure out how a first-year human had cracked their impossible scenario with nothing but fire, food, and the audacity to refuse to panic. Honestly, I was still figuring it out myself. But I'd learned something important today. The galaxy was vast, filled with species more advanced than humans in almost every measurable way. But we brought something unique to the table. Not superior technology or natural advantages, just a stubborn refusal to let circumstances dictate our fate, a talent for bringing people together, and an unshakable belief that any situation, no matter how dire, could be improved with food and community. Also, apparently, a willingness to grill during apocalyptic weather events. As I entered my quarters and collapsed onto my bunk, my communicator pinged. A message from the Academy's administrative office. Cadet Webb, your presence is requested at tomorrow's senior staff meeting. Command wishes to discuss implementing your survival methodologies across all training programs. Also, the commissary is asking for your seasoning technique. Please advise. Admin. I laughed. Of course they wanted my seasoning technique. I'd heated ration bars on a rock in the middle of a plasma storm. That was apparently legendary now. My communicator pinged again, this time from Pip. Marcus, thank you for today. I spent 6 hours convinced I would die. Instead, I had the best meal of my life and made friends. You humans are strange and wonderful. Pip. Then Gornax. Human, the Thraken High Council has been informed of today's events. They are intrigued. Expect formal dinner invitation. Bring your cooking rock. Gornax. and Vrilton. Cadet Webb, I have submitted my official report. I recommended you for advanced leadership track. Your methods are unorthodox but undeniably effective. The galaxy needs more thinkers like you. Respectfully, Commander Vrilton. I stared at the ceiling, processing the day. I'd joined the Galactic Defense Academy expecting to be the underdog, the primitive human trying to keep up with advanced alien species. Instead, I'd apparently revolutionized survival training by doing something humans had been doing since we lived in caves. Making fire, cooking food, and bringing people together. Maybe that was humanity's real superpower. Not strength or speed or intelligence, but the ability to look at impossible situations and say, "Yeah, but have you tried having dinner first?" My communicator pinged one last time. Unknown sender. Cadet Webb, this is Fleet Admiral Corsix. I've reviewed the simulation recordings. Impressive work. When you graduate, assuming you survive your remaining training without barbecuing through any more apocalypses, I want you on my command staff. The galaxy needs officers who can think outside doctrine. Also, my species cannot cook. We would appreciate recipes. Corsix. I grinned and closed my eyes, and closed my... Tomorrow I'd deal with staff meetings and interviews and probably a lot of confused instructors asking me to explain basic thermodynamics. Tomorrow, I'd start whatever insane next phase of training the Academy had planned. But tonight? Tonight I'd sleep well, knowing that somewhere in the galaxy military doctrine was being rewritten, because a human decided that even plasma storms couldn't ruin a good meal. The Webb Protocol had a nice ring to it. I just hoped the next simulation didn't involve water. I was good with fire, but I couldn't exactly grill underwater. Although, knowing humanity, someone had probably figured that out too. We were just that stubborn.